Okay, we'll get things started. Thank you so much for your patience. This evening, we have two distinct meetings. One is Committee of Adjustment and one is Council. I believe most of you are here for Committee of Adjustment matters in regards to the three public meetings that are happening. I'm going to do our land acknowledgement and then some quick opening remarks. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation. So before going to council colleagues for approval of the agenda, just some quick opening remarks. We wanted to thank our Old Town Kemple BIA and the hundreds of families who attended our Easter Bunny Hop. This is a signature event in the community, and we always welcome a myriad of new families as well as returning ones. So I want to thank all of the businesses that participated in our Old Town BIA event. This Saturday, we're really excited to host an orientation and information session in regards to North Grenville's proposed indoor multi-use sports dome. It'll be 9 to 12 on the campus, just ahead of the old soccer fields, for those of you who may be familiar with the soccer fields. Behind the greenhouses is another way to orient yourself. So it's an exciting chance to show the momentum that we have in the community for our proposed indoor sports dome. As some of you may know, we've applied for $8 million from the Government of Ontario's Park and Recreation Fund. It's a $200 million fund. The competition is intense. We believe we're very worthy recipients of $8 million, which would offset the cost of a game-changing facility for North Grenville, so you can check it out on our website. The Arts and Culture Development Fund is now open. This program supports local artists and organizations in fostering creativity and cultural expression in North Grenville. We know we have an extremely artistic community and lots of ideas, so feel free to check out our website for that fund. And construction on County Road 43 continues. We will see council colleagues and members of the public the commencement of some of the additional roundabouts, including one at 43 and 44. We've always made the commitment to ensuring that traffic flows on County Road 43, even during the height of construction. So even with the construction or the commencement of the roundabout at 43 and 44, you will be able to move in all directions, but it will feel disruptive. So we're doing our best to share information through the newspaper, radio, and all of our social media channels. But we'll have a few days before that starts after Easter. And with that, we just want to wish all members of our community a great Easter weekend. We hope the weather is good, if not fabulous. I know it's been touch and go. And we also know many others in our community are observing Passover. So obviously, we wish everyone a safe and wonderful long weekend. And with that, we'll look for an approval of the minutes. Council colleagues, you have before you minutes from Feb 12th, 2025 and March 25th, 2025. So if I can have a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor O'Sullivan, thank you. And this is again to approve minutes from Feb 12th and March 25th. Any questions or comments in regards to those minutes? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great, thank you. So next is disclosures of interest, colleagues. This is in regards to perceived or real financial benefit or loss derived from any item on tonight's agenda. Any disclosures? Not seeing any. We'll carry on. So we have three public hearings this evening, and in each instance I have to read a legally mandated script. It will sound exactly the same for all three, so you might feel like it's repetitive, but it's what is required in order for us to hold a public meeting. So we're starting with 51 Heard Street. We are in the Committee of Adjustment. So the Committee of Adjustment will now hold a public hearing to consider application number A0525 on the lands located at 51 Heard Street, Concession 3S, Part Lot 25, Geographic Town of Kemple, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to allow a deck to be screened in at a distance of 13.67 meters from the regulatory flood line with conditions. This hearing is obviously your opportunity to provide any feedback on the application, and the committee welcomes questions or comments you may have. We encourage you to do so at this public meeting, as the Planning Act rules suggest that the public's ability to voice objections later in the process may be limited if written or oral comments are not submitted this evening. An appeal may be filed to the Ontario Land Tribunal by the applicant, a specified person, or a public body. Debbie Wood is here this evening as our Secretary-Treasurer, and she'll keep a record summary. Any persons who wish to receive notice of the committee's decision can, of course, go through Debbie. And I'd just like to ask, are there people here for this particular public meeting? Great, thank you. So I'll pass this file over to Mr. Mosher for an initial presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If we could go to the next slide, please. So yes, this variance request is to provide relief from the setback from the regulatory flood line. In the slides that are coming, what you'll see is that the proposed construction is located completely out of the floodplain and is in all other ways compliant with North Grenville's zoning bylaw, except that we have a provision within section 625 of the zone bylaw, which says that where you're adjacent to a floodplain, any building and structure must be 15 meters setback. In this case, applicants are desiring to screen in an existing deck at that distance, so it would further entrench that this structure is somewhat moving closer, although it's still within the existing footprint of that deck. And so for this reason, this variance request is triggered, because it's not just a deck anymore, it's now going to be screened in living space or additional living space. So if we go to the next slide, we can look at the official plan, the zoning for the subject property, which it happens to be in an area of the municipality which is currently zoned residential first density. And you'll see that there's this sort of hashed symbol to the top of it, which is the floodplain itself. This gray hatching shows that it is somewhat adjacent to a provincially significant wetland, although the gray hatching is a little bit out of date, as records from the Conservation Authority indicate that it's no longer adjacent to a properly defined provincially significant wetland. But this is the subject property highlighted in red. It is on Heard Street, and then it does back onto Kemptville Creek. If we go to the next slide, we'll look at the official plan. So this is showing us that, again, the subject property is designated. It's a little bit interesting here, but it is designated rural. Again, it's right adjacent to the urban serviced area, but not within it. It's got that floodplain designation to the north as well. It's adjacent to the newer Heard Street subdivision, which is a 7-lot subdivision. And again, just shows that it's adjacent Heard Street and then backing onto Kemptville Creek. This next map, I think, will show it a little bit better. And just you can see the aerial view of where it is. So it's a corner lot now with the opening up of some of those lots in the new subdivision. So it has technical frontage on the new road Carta Terrace, but actual frontage onto Heard Street is where the driveway access is from. If we go to the next slide, please, we can look at the site plan that's been submitted in support of this application. And what this shows to us is the existing dwelling and the location of the deck. It shows us the approximate distance from the top of the regulatory flood line, which is 13.67 meters as indicated on this sketch. The other thing of note is that there is a slope that's present. And where slopes are present, there's a line of text within the zone bylaw that says you can construct additions within setbacks of slope or the influence areas of slopes, as long as there's a geotechnical report that's submitted, which is supportive. So we have received a geotechnical support in, a geotechnical report in support of this application, which demonstrates that with the screening in of the deck, there will be no negative impacts to the slope itself. We did circulate that to the conservation authorities because ultimately, as the approval authority for natural hazards, which slopes are considered to be, they will need to issue a regulatory permit. I'm pleased to report that we've received confirmation back from the Conservation Authority that they have no issues with the slope stability report that's been prepared, other than to note that an erosion and sediment control plan during construction would need to be implemented. If we could go to the next slide, please. So in general, this development maintains more than a 30-meter setback from the edge of the Kemptville Creek. It's developing on a slope or adjacent to slope, but it's been It's doing so in a way that is supported by information that's prepared by a qualified professional that has been peer reviewed by the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and is therefore generally consistent with the provincial policy statement. It's occurring in an area that's already developed, and therefore it doesn't contravene the rural policies of North Grenville's official plan, nor the rural policies of the county's official plan. If we go to the next slide, please. We did receive some comments for this application. We have to circulate 2 people as required under the Planning Act. We received an email of no comment from Bylaw Services and Emergency and Protective Services. And again, as mentioned, after the slide deck was published, we received that technical review comment from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. If we go to the next slide, please. Variances are allowed to be passed with conditions, and so staff recommends that if the committee approves this proposed variance, that it would be any decision would be subject to the following conditions, and those conditions would require that the applicants do obtain that Section 28 permit from the Conservation Authority, which is already in process, that an erosion and sediment control plan would be submitted in support of the application, and this is, the reference to our official plan is put in brackets there. That's where this is coming from. Where you have a development on a slope hazard, there is a requirement that a minor site plan control agreement be entered into, and that's from Section 531 of our official plan. And then again, just a requirement that the development be generally in keeping with the submitted site plan that you've seen. And we say this because sometimes as development occurs, there may be minor tweaks here and there. And so as long as it's generally in keeping with that development proposal that's been received, and there's no deviation from the slope hazard report, it should be fine. So we can go to the final slide, please. So staff does recommend supporting the requested variance, subject to the noted conditions. In our opinion, the variances are minor. The intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw is being maintained. There's no further encroachment towards the slope. It's just rebuilding existing deck on top of, screening in a porch on top of an existing deck. It's done the slope stability report as is required by North Grenville's official plan and the zoning bylaw, and therefore the official plan is also being maintained. And we believe that the reduction is desirable and appropriate based on the information that's been submitted. So that's the report, but I'm happy to answer questions if there's any.
Thank you. Council colleagues, any questions in regards to Mr. Mosher's report? Not seeing any. Does the applicant or Mr. Lockwood wish to add anything? No? Okay. So as I understand it, the recommendation, Ms. Remming, is that the Committee of Adjustment grant relief for application A0525, the property located at 51 Hurd Street, Geographic Township of Oxford on Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, from the following section of Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5012, Section 6.25C, to allow a deck to be screened in at a distance of 13.67 meters from the regulatory flood line and subject to the conditions as noted in Mr. Mosher's report. And because the request is minor, the intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw and official plan are being maintained, and the variances are within the parameters for reconstruction in the floodplain hazards designation. So that is the motion for consideration. I did not close the public meeting, Ms. Remming, which I believe I have to do before considering the motion. Ms. Wood? Should I close the public meeting? Yes? I will presume so. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to ask the conditions that were outlined just to the applicant or Mr. Lockwood. They seem very achievable. They're supportable in terms of the plan. Obviously, Mr. Lockwood, your design and proposed way forward are referenced in the motion. So I presume all of this is viable from the applicant's perspective. Okay. Great. So then I'm just going to look for a mover and a seconder, colleagues. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilson, thank you. And if there's nothing further, I have closed the public meeting. I have a mover and a seconder, and I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great. That carries. Okay, thank you very much. That's the first of 3 public meetings. So now I'm moving to the second, and as noted, I will be reading a very similar text to move us to our second public meeting. The Committee of Adjustment will now, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming in regards to your first application. Moving on, we're now looking at A0425 for 3642 Gladderway Private. The Committee of Adjustment will now hold a public hearing to consider application number A0425 on the lands located at 3642 Gladderway Private, Concession 2, Part Lot 36, Geographic Township of South Gore, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to reduce the setback from the regulatory flood line, to reduce the minimum required interior side yard, and to allow an increase in lot coverage from 15 to 30% to facilitate construction of a single detached dwelling. This hearing is obviously your opportunity to provide any feedback on this application. We encourage you to do so at this public hearing, as the Planning Act rules suggest that the public's ability to voice objections later in the process may be limited. An appeal may be filed to the Ontario Land Tribunal by the applicant, a specified person, or a public body. Ms. Wood is here with us, again, as our Secretary-Treasurer, and any persons wishing notice of the decision can certainly approach Ms. Wood after the fact. Are there people here for this public meeting? Okay. And are you the applicant or a member of the public? You're the applicant. Great. Okay. So we will move over to Mr. Mosher for this particular report, and we'll invite the applicant to speak after a first round of questions with council. Mr. Mosher.
Thank you, Mayor Peckford. If we can go to the next slide, please. So the nature of this variance request is twofold. Again, similar to the last application, construction at this property is proposed to exceed a 30-meter setback from the normal high watermark of the Rideau River. However, it's proposed to be adjacent to the floodplain, still fully outside of it, but it just can't quite meet the additional 15-meter setback from the floodplain that's in our zone bylaw. So there's been a request to reduce that from 15 meters down to 10. The other relief that's been requested is in relation to the provisions of the rural zone, and that is to reduce the interior side yard setback from 6 meters to 3 meters, and to allow an increase in lot coverage from 15 to 30% to allow the proposed development to occur at the property. If we go to the next slide, this is an aerial view of the property. It's located at the northeast extremity of the municipality of North Grenville. This main road that you see in yellow, that's shown on the aerial photo here, is County Road 19 as it goes towards the border between North Grenville and the former township of Osgood. The subject property is outlined in red. As you can see on the west side, that's the Rideau River, and this property extends over an existing right-of-way. So at the north portion of it, it's called North Crest Private. And then to the south, it's called Glider Way Private. And this property's address is specifically on Glider Way Private. If we go to the next slide, please. Zoning on the property is half floodplain and half rural. It's important to note that the zone layer here is slightly out of date. We have received updated mapping from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority that moves the floodplain closer to the river, so less of the property is actually occupied by the floodplain. And there's a provision in our zone bylaw that says where we have more up-to-date floodplain mapping, that takes precedence even in the event that our zone schedules might be a bit out of date. Next slide, please. So this official plan, because that came into effect after our zone bylaw, is much more accurate, and you can see that there's less of the property that's in the floodplain designation. Much more of the property is within that rural land use category. If we could go to the next slide. So this is a proposed draft site plan, which shows the structure. A couple things I'd like to note is that you can see the water's edge at the far left of your screen, showing in September 2024. And from there, there is a number indicated as 31 meters. And so you can see that the cottage, as it's proposed, it exceeds the 30-meter setback from the normal high water mark. The other thing I'd like to point your attention to is the 100-year floodplain line. Now this is shown, you can see the text, which is just kind of on the bottom of the rectangle, bottom left, and it's pointing to a line. And from that line, you can see that it's an indication of 10.2 meters from the extent of the regulatory floodplain. So this is the first thing that's being requested to be varied. Again, our zone standards say you have to be 15 meters, and the individual has shown that it's very difficult to achieve all the things they wish to with this proposed dwelling, and accommodate a septic and accommodate a well, because it's a narrower and a skinnier lot. The other things to note are the interior side yard setbacks. So if you look at the top And the bottom of the dwelling itself, that's where it's showing 3.03, 3.07 at the top end, 3.52, and 3.02 at the bottom end. The normal zone standard in a rural zone is 6 meters, but it's not uncommon in cottage country that 3 meters is gone to, because typically you have smaller cottage lots. It's interesting, as we circulated this application, we did hear from some members of the local community who had some concerns just about the interior side yard setback. And because the zoning on this property is rural, it defaults to the 6 meters, but many other floodplain properties actually have a setback from the interior side yard of 3 meters. So this is somewhat in keeping with those other types of cottage developments. It's not seen to be something that's too egregious from a planning perspective. And then the other thing to note is that lot coverage is over. Again, in the rural area, we see 15% is the maximum. They've asked to go up to 30%. The actual dwelling itself with the proposed garage, porch, etc., would only be at about 25%, but going up to 30 would allow for the ability to have some type of a minor structure in the future if desired. Also importantly, you see at the far right of this sketch that the septic system will be located well back from the Rideau River itself and well back from the floodplain. It's important to note that this is an existing lot of record, and often when you have existing lots of record with modern zone standards, it's common to have variances, especially in cottage country. Importantly here, they are able to maintain that 30-meter setback from the normal high water mark. Next slide, please. I think I've already mentioned those things. The applicant will ultimately have to obtain a permit from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, both the regulatory office as well as the septic office, as well as a building permit from North Grenville. If we could go to the next slide, please. So in general, the development does meet all the planning policies of the provincial planning statement, the official plan of North Grenville, and the official plan of Leeds and Grenville. Go into this a bit more in my report, but being in the rural area, it's high and dry, for lack of a better word. It's outside the floodplain, it's maintaining those setbacks. And it does need to go a little bit closer to accommodate the dwelling size, but again, that's not uncommon in cottage country. Next slide, please. At the time this slide deck was prepared, we received an email from our building division that setbacks must ensure that they meet limiting distances from the Ontario Building Code. And that's just to say that even if you go a little closer to your lot line, there still may be some limits imposed by the building code that need to be adhered to. We received a no comment email from Emergency and Protective Services, a no comment email from Bylaw, a request for more information from a member of the public, and then after this slide deck was prepared, we had received an objection from a neighbor, but upon giving him additional information and having a phone conversation to assure him that the right-of-way, which is private, was not affected by this application, he rescinded his stated objection. Next slide, please. So based on the foregoing, staff's comfortable to recommend that the Committee of Adjustment support this variance application. The variances are minor. They do meet the intent of the zoning bylaw, most notably being setback from water and mostly setback from the floodplain. They keep the spirit and intent of the official plan, and they, there's an error on this slide. It's not non-complying and non-conforming. Just should say that it's minor in nature and desirable for development. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Deputy Director Mosher. My question is about the septic system being on the other side of the access road and therefore traffic having to travel over, I gather, the connection piece. Does that pose a problem?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, generally it does not, and it's not uncommon in cottage country that you have a right-of-way that splits a property into two distinct portions.
Okay.
And then it is, the septic system, as I understand it, I'm not a Part 8 designer, can be designed in such a way to ensure that it withstands any sort of vehicle load that's going back and forth across the right-of-way.
Okay, thank you. So the access to this property and I gather the two properties west of it would be on that easement, that right-of-way.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't know the full details of the private right-of-way because it is private in between those citizens who have certain access to it. But the plan to have the septic on that side and pump waste that way will not affect or impede the ability for people to pass over the right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, colleagues? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Deputy Director Mosher. My question is about the private lane as well. I guess on the Google Earth, it didn't look like there was any lane there, although on the drawing it indicates the easement. What are the plans of the homeowner? Will he be connecting those two private lanes across his vacant property? And are there specifications for the type of road he builds privately?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll do the best I can here. It may be best for the applicant to speak about the private right-of-way. Again, we aren't privy to the rules, regulations, rights, responsibilities of it because it is a private road. But it's my understanding through the conversations I've had that there's no intention to affect it in any way whatsoever.
I guess my question, does it exist right now?
Yes, that's
road-
our
it does.
understanding.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Any other questions, colleagues? Would the applicant like to add anything? Okay. Okay, we've captured it well, I think, in terms of some of those inquiries by council. Okay. Okay, so then I think we'll move to the motion then, colleagues, and thank you, Mr. Mosher, for lending a very nuanced lens to this application and understanding sort of the complexity of this file, given that rural properties, no two are alike, so there's lots of variation. So I'll close the meeting, the public meeting, and I'll ask that council colleagues consider the following: that the Committee of Adjustment grant relief for A0425, the property located at 3642 Gladder Way, private part lot 38, concession to former Township of South Gore, now the Municipality of North Grenville, from the following sections of Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5012, Section 6.25C to allow a reduction in the setback from the regulatory floodline from 15 meters to 10 meters, and Section 9.2 to reduce the minimum required interior side yard from 6 meters to 3 meters, and to allow an increase in lot coverage from 15 to 30% to permit a single detached dwelling. And of course, as noted, because the request is minor, the intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw and official plan are being maintained, and the variances are within the parameters for additions in the floodplain hazards designation. Who would like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Strakian. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. Thank you. All right. Anything else on this particular file? I'm not seeing anything, so I will call the vote. All in favor? Great. So thank you again to the applicant and our planning staff for moving that forward. We do appreciate it. So next, we'll go to our final public hearing under the Committee of Adjustment. We do have another meeting after the Committee of Adjustment, but this is in regards to our last, and this is in regards to 116 Clothier Street East. The Committee of Adjustment will now hold a public hearing to consider application number A0225 on the lands located at 116 Clothier Street East, Plan 11, Part Lot 5, geographic town of Kemptville, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to allow an addition and deck to be constructed at a reduced setback from the regulatory flood line and to interpret lot coverage as applying to the entire lot area. This hearing obviously is your opportunity to provide any feedback you have on this application, and the committee welcomes any questions or comments you may have. We encourage you to do so as the public hearing. During this public hearing, as the Planning Act rules suggest that the public's ability to voice objections later may be limited. An appeal may be filed to the Ontario Land Tribunal by the applicant, a specified person, or a public body. Ms. Wood, of course, is here as our Secretary Treasurer. Any persons wishing further information can go through Debbie after the meeting. Are there people here for this public meeting? Great. So the applicant is here and other members of the public, I presume? Okay. So with that, I'll pass this one over to Mr. Mosher for his third presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If we can go to the next slide, please. So again, as stated, the purpose of this application is to request variance to allow an addition to be constructed. Again, this addition would be similar to the first application heard tonight where it's on a slope hazard. And again, there has been a slope stability assessment report that's been provided. So our zone bylaw says where that's done and it's been accepted that that is okay. But the thing is that the proposed addition, while it would be an addition to, again, screen in a portion of a deck and add additional living space, and it doesn't go any closer onto the slope hazard or any closer to the setback from the floodplain, it is still adjacent to the floodplain. It's about 1.8 meters from the floodplain where this proposed screened-in addition would be. So that's the specific relief that's being sought firstly. The second part is that because the property, as will be shown shortly, has split zoning, it's residential first density and floodplain, lot coverage is considered to apply only to the residential first density. So if you were to think about there's only a 30% density allowance provided in the R1 zone, it already would exceed that today. So the majority of the property is floodplain. So staff is recommending that if approved, that this variance also be granted, that lot coverage would apply to the entire property, not just the small portion that's zoned as residential first density. If we go to the next slide, I'll show the zoning. And so we can see that it is residential first density here and flooding and erosion protection. It's the property that's highlighted in red. I know there's a lot of symbols and a little bit of busyness here. Another thing to note is the gray hatching shows the 120 meter setback from the provincially significant wetland. Important to note that recently North Grenville zone bylaw was changed so that as long as development maintains a 30 meter setback from a provincially significant wetland, it's considered to be compliant with zoning, which the proposed development would do. If we go to the next slide, please. And again, this is the property highlighted in red here. The land use designation is residential, other than the hatched area, which is floodplain. So as you can see, quite a small area is actually outside the floodplain, and that's where the majority of all buildings and structures are located today. If we go to the next slide, this is the development sketch that we received in support of the application. I did try to zoom it in just a little bit in your top right corner. And so you can see there's the existing dwelling. It shows the driveway. It shows the existing neighboring dwelling. It shows Clothier Street, which is where the property is located. This property is considered to be a corner lot, even though Barnes Street does not continue as an open road along the eastern edge. I'm sorry, this is not considered to be a corner lot because there's an intervening home. Sorry, this is considered to have frontage on Clothier Street. And as you can see, there's the existing dwelling, and there is a proposed addition that's shown in a darker gray hatch and a proposed deck addition. And these are generally over the existing decks that exist at the site now. Also of note on this sketch, there is an armor stone retaining wall, which is in process of receiving permission from the Conservation Authority. So this is the nature of the request to construct this addition and proposed deck addition more or less over top of existing structures. And there has been this slope stability report that's been prepared. It is being reviewed by the Conservation Authority. To my knowledge, we haven't received a similar letter as had been received for 51 Heard Street, but I do understand it's in process. Next slide, please. So the proposed development would maintain a 30-meter setback from the edge of the Kemptville Creek and the provincially significant wetland, as well as the normal high water mark. Again, it's just close to the edge of the floodplain there. Development would be consistent with the PPS. They have provided a slope stability report that demonstrates no negative impacts to the slope hazard itself. Names a few conditions that would need to be followed. And we have received some preliminary information from the CA that they've received that report, that they're currently reviewing it, but we don't have that full letter from them on that point. This development would not contravene North Grenville's official plans, nor the county's official plans. Again, our official plan says that if you have a slope hazard, you have to do this slope stability report, and then it talks about mitigation measures. Our official plan also says that where this is the case, you do have to do site plan control, is to regulate the development a little bit further and to clearly articulate rights and responsibilities as the development goes forward. In terms of comments received, we did, at the time this slide deck was received, are prepared, have an email of no comment from Bylaw Services and the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. As this application was circulated, certain individuals requested information, so we sent that out. And there was a concern that was raised just today from a neighbor, and it appeared that there was the Armorstone retaining wall on that previous sketch. It appeared that that might be constructed on their property. We were able to send them a copy of a survey given to us by the applicant's agent. And then once we sent them that, it clearly showed that the proposed Armorstone retaining wall would not be on their property, and they said that that allayed their concerns. So we do have some proposed conditions, and I just need to take a little bit of time to talk about one of them, but we'll get there. So because we still don't have that Conservation Authority permit, the first proposed condition would be that the development must obtain this Section 28 permit to support the general development plan that's most appropriately depicted in the site plan that's been presented before the committee tonight. As a result of that, and a result of our official plan, we would need to see an erosion and sediment control plan be submitted, which we haven't seen yet. The development would need to enter into a site plan control agreement. The reason for this is, again, as stated in Section 531 of our official plan, that where you're on a slope hazard, this is required. Because this property is a waterfront lot and adjacent to an existing trail system, there's a line of text within North Grenville's official plan that says that the municipality should discuss options for purchasing, acquiring, managing, or providing access for waterfront trails or recreational purposes. So we know from various planning documents, such as the waterfront strategy and others, that the Curry Park Trail comes adjacent to this property, then it goes up Barnes Street, and then people get to the downtown via Clothier Street. This property is adjacent to that trail, and so because this section of our official plan is present, staff is bringing this forward for the committee's consideration. Important to note, we're bringing it forward as something that we as staff don't feel that this variance should be held up for this particular point whatsoever, but we think that this should be something that is considered by the Committee of Adjustment as stated in the official plan. And then the final proposed condition would be that the development generally is going to be in keeping with the submitted site plan. If we can go to the final slide. So staff does recommend supporting this variance, subject to the noted conditions. It's generally minor. The intent of the zone bylaw would be maintained, and the official plan as well. And it would be appropriate and desirable for the use of land. That concludes my report, but I'm happy to answer questions if there's any.
Okay, council colleagues, anything in regards to the report? I wanted to ask, in terms of the permit from RVCA, I'm presuming that that's fairly attainable?
As far as I know, Madam Mayor, it is, yes.
Okay.
I haven't had the benefit of ongoing discussions with the CA, but I know that the applicant's agent may have some more information. But in general, as long as a permit complies with the regulatory policies, it should be able to obtain a Section 28 permit.
Okay. So we'll just entertain council questions, and of course, if the applicant or representatives wish to come down, they're certainly able to. Certainly, I'm aware that there's been some discussion in regards to the condition for the owner and the municipality to discuss options for purchasing, acquiring, managing, or providing access for waterfront lands, and completely appreciate Mr. Mosher why that would be a consideration from a staff perspective. I know that that is a challenging proposition for really any property owner or many property owners. So I'm personally not wedded to that condition. I think at this time it may be appropriate to separate out that discussion from this Committee of Adjustment application. So certainly that's something that I would offer to my council colleagues. But before we go there, colleagues, are there any other questions of Mr. Mosher? We are in a public meeting, and of course I'll invite the applicant or other individuals to speak as well if they wish. So Councillor Strachan and Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and to you, Deputy Director Mosher, to echo what the Mayor has stated, I think the official plan does cover that discussion and the want for the municipality to enter in those kinds of discussions. I'm not sure that, I don't believe that adding it as a condition to this application is necessary, and that opportunity would still be available to the municipality should we want to exercise that down the road. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I, for one, am wedded to that condition. A little bit of background. I believe the waterfront trail has been considered for almost 2 decades, since 2006. The trail was one of 6 sesquicentennial projects, I believe, brought forward by the late Councillor Terry Butler. I had the pleasure of working with Terry as Executive Director of the BIA when Terry was on previous council. So I heard almost daily about the attributes of the waterfront trail, how it would bring people downtown by walking along the waterfront trail. I think it's fairly benign condition. We're talking about discussing an opportunity for public access. Certainly, it doesn't work unless all property owners between Barnes and Rotary Park are agreeable. But I think I would like to see a precedent set when we're talking about those properties to have that condition included. Whether the property owners are willing or not to agree to discuss, it's up to them. If they're not interested in discussing, I understand that completely. When the waterfront trail was discussed by previous councils, I don't think there was ever any discussion about expropriating the property. So if with respect to individual property rights, I think we all respect that and want to see that maintained. So having a discussion about managing or providing access, I think is reasonable. To have the discussions to see where the Kennelys are with different proposals we could make in order to link Curry Park to Rotary Park. I think it's desirable in the long term. Terry didn't live long enough to see it realized, and I may not live long enough to see it realized either. But I think it's a goal of the municipality to allow people to walk along the waterfront and have a contiguous trail, rather than to see it interrupted at Barnes and come to a complete stop in the short section in front of Salamanders. So just in terms of precedent, I would like to see it included. Once again, I think it's fairly benign. We're just, I don't have the exact condition in front of me, but it's opening the doors to have a discussion with the property owners. It's not predetermining the result. And again, I don't think expropriation is on anybody's mind. So I'm wedded to that for those reasons. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Are there other comments before we open it up to members of the public and or the applicant? So Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to echo Deputy Mayor Barclay's comments, I agree that I would like to see this clause stay in. It isn't closing the door completely. It is leaving it open for discussion between the property owner and the municipality. And it's possible that maybe if the other property owners in that section between Barnes and Rotary Park come forward and agree to the access, I think it would be a very valuable asset to the people in North Grenville and in Kemptville to be able to walk along the waterfront. There is access further east of Barnes that does go through private property. There are signs that say, please stay on the trail, private property. And I use that a lot, and I haven't seen any concerns or any people going off that trail, but that's another matter. So I agree that we should keep this clause in, keep the door open for further discussion. I share the dream of having a waterfront trail. It's an access, or it's a great asset to the community, and I'd like to keep that clause in as well. Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Councillor Strahan.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, and to, I guess, Deputy Director Mosier. The statements under these proposed conditions, should they be approved, are what I would call shall statements, mandatory statements, with the exception of that one. So it seems that it doesn't fit well with the list. And if we were to include it there, it's not an optional discussion. It sounds like we're insisting on coming to the table and insisting that the property owners come to the table. So I think that having it in the official plan already allows us to propose an opportunity for a discussion, and that putting it on this list does not give more weight to that, unless we do want to make it mandatory, which is different from what both councillors O'Sullivan and Barclay have stated as well. So I think it just, to me, it doesn't sit as well. So I'm perhaps repeating myself, but I think to me it stands out. Thank you.
Keeping in mind we're in the public meeting, and I understand this debate is important, I just, maybe we'll take a final round of comments and then invite the applicant or their representatives to speak. I'm inclined, I share Councillor Strachan's perspective, quite frankly, in this regard, so I would like to see any recommendation in regards to the application, separate out this discussion. I also think it may be valuable to hear from the applicant, but I will recognize a last round, and then we'll perhaps go to the applicant. So I have Deputy Mayor and Councillor Wilson.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I don't recall in many conversations with the late Terry Butler any discussion about expropriation. So it may make it more palpable to my council colleagues if we could delete purchasing, acquiring, and just leave it at managing and providing access to waterfront lands, just to make it less scary, I guess.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Peckford. I would like to see it removed. It's not part of the, there's no appetite for us to actually purchase this land at this point. In the future, possibly. I mean, we've been talking about this for almost 20 years of doing this trail. And I know how passionate everyone is about their property along there. It is waterfront. It's also in a floodplain, so that any of the trails that are along there would be susceptible to flooding anyways. Most of those backyards, the water does come up to that flood line that they're talking about. So I would like to see this move forward without any land acquisition mentioned in it, because this is what they're here for, is to build their addition onto their house.
Okay, so why don't we leave it there, colleagues? We can return to the substance of the motion. And I think we've gotten what we need from staff at this particular time. So is there anyone wishing to speak? We are in a public meeting. All right, please come down. Yep. Yes, you have to come down. To be on the public record, you have to speak into the mic. So thank you very much. We'll just make sure it's working for you.
I guess I'll start with my name. My name is Neil Kennelly. We're discussing my house. I'm not sure why I'm here. I feel like I wouldn't be here if it was any other property in town. I find it actually offensive that some members of this council are describing my asset as a municipal asset when they were discussing this. We bought the property in 2006. It was for sale then. Municipality wanted it. They should have bought it then. We want to add some square footage to our house because we want to live here. We're thinking about our aging parents. We want our kids to stay with us. For a condition like this, I just want to be clear what certain members of council or this board are asking. They're asking that this clause in which a government entity is going to put conditions upon the, I guess, relationship within a vulnerable neighbor, a weaker neighbor, for them to do their own land, and then use that land for their own purposes. Some striking similarities between things happening in our world today. You know, I think we're all proud Canadians here, and I think we can, that sort of rhetoric strikes a chord with some of us. And I think it will with most of the municipality, more so than enjoying a walk on an extra 1% of the creek and bypassing businesses like Graham's Bakery, like the other businesses on Clothier Street that this proposed pathway, this slight extension, well, forget those businesses. They don't get to enjoy it now. They don't get to enjoy that increased foot traffic between Prescott Street and the path. I'm not willing to discuss it. My wife isn't. So I think that's all there is to say at this time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in regards to the application? Okay. So with that in mind, I will close the public meeting, and council, as chair, what I can offer this evening is obviously the recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment grant relief for the property located at 116 Clothier Street East, part of Lot 5, Plan 11, geographic town of Kemptville, now the municipality of North Grenville, from the following sections of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5012, as noted by Mr. Mosher. And the second part of that motion is subject to the following conditions. So I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder to either move the motion as is or to move a modified version of the motion that would obviously remove the condition in regards to waterfront lands. Councillor Strachan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move a modified motion to remove the condition referring to the purchasing, acquiring, managing, and providing access to waterfront lands.
Okay. And do I have a seconder? Okay. Good. So is there any further discussion on this particular item? Deputy Mayor.
As I said before, I think a modification of that might relieve some of the anxiety about a Goliath dealing with a David. Again, I think all of council has respect for individual property rights, and we don't want to infringe on that. And again, in the 20 years that I've been talking about the waterfront trail, I've never mentioned expropriation. So we're not talking about heavy guns being applied, but what I would suggest and an amendment to the recommendation of removing purchasing and acquiring and leaving in managing and providing access. And again, I'd like to emphasize it's a discussion. If they're not willing to discuss it, that's fine, but I'm interested in having this set precedents for other properties along the waterfront that might be more amenable to providing that connection. Once again, that connection is from Anniversary Park north of the bridge along the waterfront trail, connecting Anniversary Park to Curry Park and Curry Park to Rotary Park. And I think it would be a great thing to see in this community. And the idea of removing something in which we are discussing with property owners that vision that was has always been part of it and is part of our official plan. I think that it would be good to have that as a precedent. So I'm suggesting removing the words purchasing and acquiring.
So procedurally, we have a motion on the table from Councillor Strachan, seconded by Councillor Wilson, which removes the condition altogether. So we will need to subject that motion to a vote.
Rather than dealing with the recommendation from staff?
Well,
the
recommendation from staff is recommendation. We have a mover and a seconder in regards to a slight variation on that recommendation. So it's at the discretion of council how we wish to move forward with recommendations. We always appreciate their input, of course, but in this case, the motion on the table currently is to remove that clause altogether.
Well, I guess I'm asking the mover whether that would be an acceptable friendly amendment to their motion.
Councillor Strachan, do you accept any amendment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Barclay, no, and there's no anxiety on my part regarding that particular statement. I don't think it's about expropriation. I just don't think it aligns with conditions where we have mandatory conditions and that we're now adding in a mandatory discussion with property owners. It is already covered in the official plan. I don't think there's no need, any need for it to be included in this particular application. Thank you.
So we'll carry on with any other comments, and then I'm going to call the question on this motion. Should another member of council wish to introduce another motion subject to this motion, I think that can be considered, but we'd have to figure out the procedural protocols of that. As chair, it's my job to ensure all members of council feel like they've been heard in the debate. I would like to say that I personally struggle with this. I think I personally struggle with the proposed clause in regards to the waterfront because I actually also am a very active user of the waterfront trail living in Old Town Kemptville. And while I appreciate this aspirational vision for an extension of the trail, I too actually do enjoy the trail for what it is. I don't think the trail is fundamentally compromised by the fact that you take a little jaunt up the hill and you walk along Clothier for a bit, and then I continue down Prescott, and I enjoy the landscape of Prescott and the businesses around Prescott. So I recognize that in our official plan there is a desire or a stated desire to secure more waterfront lands, but at this moment in time, I think in the absence of in the absence of the goodwill of the property owners in question, not their goodwill, but because there is obviously a very strong attachment to property that they purchased, I think this is a bit of a red herring from my perspective. So I'm not supportive of keeping the condition in, and that's certainly my perspective at this time. So we have a motion, and I'm going to call the vote, and I'll be the last to vote. I'm assuming, Ms. Remming, as chair?
So if there is a tie, Madam Mayor, correct, you would be the tie-breaking vote.
Okay. So I'm going to call the question as moved by Councillor Strachan and Wilson in regards to obviously the approval of the Committee of Adjustment application with the removal of the condition in regards to waterfront lands. So all in favor? Okay, it carries. And with that, we have addressed all of the aspects of that Committee of Adjustment application, correct? Okay. So I think we're at the end of our Committee of Adjustment meeting. We just have adjournment. Okay, and then we will take a quick break, colleagues. I know many of you here are seeking to participate or observe a zoning amendment application, but we are going to take 10 minutes because it's a long evening. So we'll look to adjourn, and I'll need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Wilson, and we're adjourning at 7:35 p.m. Okay, thanks. We're going to take 10 minutes. Okay, we're going to call our meeting back to order. We're now transitioning to our council meeting. And this meeting obviously follows the Committee of Adjustment meeting. We're calling this meeting to order at 7:49 p.m. As is the protocol within the municipality, I would invite a member of council to read the land acknowledgement. Who would like to read our land acknowledgement? Thank you, Councillor Strachan.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you very much. We are just reporting out from a closed session that we convened earlier this evening. Council held a special meeting at 5 p.m. on April 16, 2025, in Meeting Room 1 at the municipality. Council considered a matter respecting automated speed enforcement in accordance with subsection 2392I and 2392K of the Municipalities Act. Council has provided staff with instructions to apply to negotiations for the potential implementation of automated speed enforcement within the municipality of North Grenville. So that is the report out from our closed session. Thank you to Ms. Remming, who supported us through our closed session in her capacity as acting clerk. We'll now move to the adoption of the agenda, colleagues, and this is in regards to our council meeting. The recommendation, of course, is that the agenda for the regular meeting of council on April 16, 2025 be approved as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson. And I understand that Councillor Sullivan's just stepped away momentarily. We're hopeful she's on her way back in. So we'll carry on. We're looking, I'll just call the vote rather, all in favor in regards to the agenda. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Of course, is in regard to perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from this evening's meeting. Any declarations of interest? Not seeing any. So we'll move to our public meetings. Of course, I think we have one for Craig Road, one for County Road, and one for County Road 20. So I will read the public meeting script that you're all familiar with now for Craig Road, and we'll get this one underway. Council will now hold a public meeting to consider an application for lands located on a part of Craig Road, part of Lot 1, Concession 4, former Township of Oxford and Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to amend the zoning on the property from rural RU to rural special exception to allow a reduced lot area in the rural zone. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this meeting or written submissions before council adopts the amendment, the Ontario Land Tribunal may refuse to consider your objections. Any persons wishing further notice of this council's decision are invited to approach our planner after the fact. And are there people here for this public meeting in regards to Craig Road? Great, thank you. And you are the applicant or members of the public? Both? Okay, and a member of the public. Okay, great. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Mosher. He'll present the report and then we'll go from there. Thank you, Mr. Mosher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If we could go to the next slide. This application is being made to fulfill a condition of a related consent application. That's B133-24. So the property received conditional approval to be severed, subject to any conditions, and one of those conditions was to obtain a site-specific zone amendment to reduce lot area. So it would require reduced lot area for the proposed severed property and a reduced lot frontage for the proposed retained property. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll show where this property is in context. It's located on Craig Road. It's quite a larger piece of land, approximately 80 acres, backing onto the Canadian Pacific Railway. Murphy Road is a little bit further to the west, and it's about a couple kilometers outside the hamlet of Oxford Mills. It's this property that's indicated in red with the star on your map, and it is currently zoned rural. I know there's a C6 there, but that's pointing to a separate property. If we go to the next slide, please. Interestingly, this property is a different official plan designation than rural. It's rural residential, and you can see that this star indicates that symbol. So a significant portion of these lands, probably 2/3, are designated as rural residential. So it's the intention that at some point in future they would likely be a subdivision. And that's important for this application because with rural residential official plan policies, you can have smaller lots as long as it's generally in keeping with the official plan. Next slide, please. This is the information we received with the consent application. We thought it was helpful to include. So what you can see is just at Craig Road, there is a small area, it's about 1 acre. It's identified as Part 2 on this map, and this would be the severed lands. And they're subject of the zone amendment. The rural zone standard requires a minimum of 1 hectare in area, and this property is only going to be 0.4 hectares or 1 acre, and so requires a zone amendment for that. The retained lands, the minimum requirement for a minimum of 200 feet of frontage on any rural zone property, it can't meet that. So it would still allow there to be some land in future should these lands ever be developed for a subdivision, so it doesn't fully cut it off for road access. So the nature of the request for the zone amendment is to rezone the Part 2 lands to recognize a reduced lot area, and on the retained lands to recognize the reduced lot frontage. Next slide, please. We reviewed the provincial planning statement regarding the subject application, and it's our opinion, or my opinion, that this application is consistent because it promotes development within a rural settlement area, as defined by the provincial planning statement. It assists with accommodating appropriate range and mix of housing and settlement areas, and it promotes development and land use patterns that are efficient and don't preclude future development. And the key point there is the road would be allowed to still continue in the future. If we go to the next slide, a little bit silent in terms of the UCLG's official plan, but it is consistent with that too by promoting healthy, integrated, and viable rural areas. If we go to the municipal OP slide, the development would meet the minimum size requirement within the rural residential designation, and the reduced lot area would still provide enough for the home to be constructed with a well and a septic, as well as road access for future if the lands are ever developed for plan of subdivision. The use is appropriate with the surrounding area, and I'm sorry, there's not supposed to be information about buffering and screening on this or site plan control, but it is in general appropriate with the surrounding area. Next slide, please. At the time that this slide deck was prepared, we had not received any external agency comments, and at the time that this slide deck has been prepared, we still have not received any comments on this application. Most noted that it was a follow-up application from the severance and said that comments had been provided for that process. Next slide, please. So staff does recommend that this application be approved to reduce the lot area for Part 2 lands and to reduce the lot frontage for the retained lands. And if it's helpful at all, the draft bylaw is available for viewing, and it shows just, although the large property shows the entire piece of land, the draft bylaw does show it just zoomed in onto that specific piece of property that we're concerned with. But that concludes the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council colleagues, any questions in regards to this particular report? Okay, so I know we have the applicant here. Does the applicant wish to speak? You have to speak on the record by coming down. Okay, I can repeat that it's self-explanatory. If you have nothing else to say, that's totally fine. If you wish to say more, you have to come down and speak at the mic. Okay. Santerre can make sure you're all settled. Thank you very much. Apologies, this is just a formal protocol in public meetings, so have a seat. Yeah. And if you can just remind us of your name, sir.
Yeah, my name's Mike Nealon.
Yep.
And I live on that property and have all the time since 87. And if you'd like further perspective, you know, created that to develop it as a subdivision in the early 90s, 91, 92, which I haven't done yet. However, it is the intention perhaps in future times, but I do live on the property and I enjoy it like that. My family does, and they're moving back there as we speak. My daughter's building a house right now. My son Sam already has, and that's on the Murphy Road side. This property, 8191, was developed by me as part of that initial concept. There's four lots, 15R8191, and there's an access way to the back property, the 85 acres in the back. For some reason, back in 1992, when I had created that 15R8191, somehow the Part 2 didn't get registered. And parts 1, 2, and 3 all have houses on them. They're the exact same size as this lot. And part 2, I'm here to, when I found out that it wasn't registered, because I would like to build a single-family house on it, like the other ones that are on that. They're all same size piece of property. And so I just would like to have it registered as my original intent back in 1991 or 92 when I did that, and it was overlooked, and so I'm just trying to make good with that. And through previous consultations with the planning department, they have determined that it is a reasonable use of the land. It's there, it's surveyed, it's part of an R plan, and that's my intent.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank
Any
you.
questions, colleagues? All right,
It's just,
okay, it's pretty straightforward, thank you. Thanks for speaking.
okay.
We'll leave it there, we'll take care
Still
of
on
it.
there.
Yeah, no worries. Does any other member of the public wish to speak? Yes, come on down.
Thank you. Hello, neighbor. I live on Part 3. My name is Connie Titarenko, and I just have I knew that when I purchased the property there, that my lawyer told me that there was possibly of a subdivision to be going back there, but he said that it hadn't been approved yet or it hadn't come through, and he said, who knows, it may never come through. And then my question is that there's quite a bit of swampland back in my corner, and if this gentleman is going to build there, I guess my concern is the water to be pulled away so that it does not run on my land and, you know, like stuff so that I'm not being inconvenienced with the property being, I guess, damaged in any way or whatever. And at one time, there was a drawing that the road, that the property would go to the other side and there would be a road next to my property going out to your back field instead of on the empty lot on the other side.
So you're between,
I'm on 3, you are 2.
yeah, so you're at I just forget which one.
I'm on the left, on the right of your side going in.
Maybe Mr. Mosher could put that up again.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we'll ask Mr. Mosher to put up the mapping, just to clarify for the member of the public where this particular
Yeah.
proposed possible residential dwelling would be situated.
I think,
Just down 2 slides.
right, so you have your property 2 next to my property 3, and you have a roadway going in there. At one time, your roadway was on my side, and your property moved over to property 1. Did that change for some reason?
I don't believe it's ever been like that, to my knowledge, maybe at the very beginning, 30 years ago, but not to my knowledge. That's the way it is right there.
Okay,
Part 2 is just didn't get registered back then, and so I'd like to do that. As far as the water control issue, there's a ditch right in front of your property as well as Part 2, and any overflow water, whether it requires fill or not, probably will.
yeah, because it just sits back there in the summertime, like it might dry up a little, but there's still, like, it's like a mosquito swamp or whatever, so it just pools back there. So my concern was if you're building back there that, you know, there would have to be some kind of trench or something dug so that it comes out to the flow. Because I have on my property a great big culvert, you know, so the water, and my neighbor has the same issue with the culvert, that there is quite a big water flow that comes from that area and also in the back of his land.
Appreciate it.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We're not gonna wanna, have, being swampy.
Yeah, but it is quite swampy back there, like you know.
Well, in the spring, yeah.
So,
Would have to be,
yeah, okay. And are you eventually still planning to produce a subdivision back there?
well, we live on it, and, things have changed, probably not in the immediate future.
Okay,
But it would have to go through, the
Yeah.
subdivision, process, and there'd be lots of
okay.
complications as to that.
No, because I've been out there since '96, and I haven't seen anything except this new house going to be coming up. So, I mean, that's quite a long time. So, everybody's kind of wondering the same thing. I talked to my neighbors, and they said that, they haven't seen anything, and they were there before me. So, okay,
It's been on the books for a long time.
yeah,
And I appreciate it.
okay. No, just wanted to voice my concern and welcome, I guess. Thank you.
Sometimes we're happy to create the conditions for neighbors to talk and chat and figure it out. So that's what's happened here. We're happy. I hope that conversation continues outside of this room. So, Mr. Mosher and Ms. Martin, I know when it comes to water on neighboring properties, maybe you could just clarify what the obligations of property owners are when they develop, and there may be those implications when it comes to stormwater, water. I recognize that Ms. Martin and council as a whole have dealt with these matters in the past in terms of how water flows. So perhaps you could just provide some supplementary comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. When you develop under our regulatory laws, you cannot negatively direct your water onto a neighboring property. So if a plan of subdivision were to come forward, a comprehensive stormwater management plan and grading and drainage plan would be required, addressing how water would be maintained on the property. And then typically during like stormwater management, so during higher volumes of rain, how is that water held within the development and then discharged slowly over time? So these are things that we do require, and with building permits, there are certain requirements in regards to grading and drainage around the house. And we do have a Drainage Act in Ontario as well that dictates common law drainage as well.
So hopefully that's of some comfort, and as you suggested, any further development in terms of a subdivision would be thoroughly vetted by the municipality, to your point. So hopefully the conversation continues informally, and we'll look to any other members of the public who may wish to speak to this application. I don't believe anyone else raised their hands. If not, we'll move council to close the public meeting. So we're closing the public meeting, and the recommendation for our consideration, though of course any recommendation can change if a member of council moves and finds a seconder to introduce a new variation of that motion. But what's being recommended this evening is that council approve bylaw 3525 to rezone a portion of unaddressed lands on Craig Road from rural RU to rural special exception RU 73 to allow a reduced lot area in the rural zone. So who wishes to move that? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, thank you. And are there any final comments, colleagues, in regards to this application? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All in favor? All right. Well, that carries. Thank you to the applicant and the individual who spoke up. And that item is addressed for the evening. So we'll go to our next public meeting. Ms. Remming, I'm just finding the script. We have the one for Craig Road and now County Road 20. I'll give this one to you so I don't mix it up. Council will now hold a public meeting to consider an applications for lands located on 2984 County Road 20, part of Lot 29, Concession 10, former Township of Oxford-on-Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to amend the zoning on the property from rural RU to Special Kennel Rural Exception 8, SRK 8, to recognize site-specific zone standards for the establishment of a kennel within the principal residence. The site-specific zoning will establish a maximum of 10 dogs permitted in the kennel at any one time. I must advise you that this is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this meeting or written submissions before council adopts the amendment, the Ontario Lands Tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any persons who wish further notice of the council's decision concerning this matter should give their full name, address, and postal code to the planner following adjournment. I believe there are a number of you here for this public meeting. Is that correct? Okay. And of course, I believe we have the applicant as well. Is that right? Okay, excellent. So I'll now pass it over to Ms. Martin, and then we will go to comments, questions from council, an opportunity for the applicant to speak or her representative, should she wish, and then comments from the public. So Ms. Martin, fire away.
Thank you, Your Worship. Let's go to the next slide. So the subject property is zoned rural and floodplain. There is a portion of the property where there is a water course that runs through it, and the floodplain is generated in and around that area. However, the area of discussion this evening as where the proposed kennel use will be is quite far from the floodplain use. The official plan on the property is rural. It is approximately 33 acres in size. It's currently used as a residential use. The proposal would utilize the existing dwelling in a fenced-in area already existing on the property for the purpose of the kennel, and there is a proposal for a future standalone kennel building on the property, and I'll provide more detail on that in the presentation. Next slide, please. Here is the location of the property. As you can see on County Road 20, it is a larger parcel of 33 acres, but there is pre-existing residential development in the area. And if we go to the next slide, there's just an aerial photograph taken from Google Maps, so you don't get to see property lines, but the image is a little more current than our GIS system as to what the surrounding area looks like. So there is vegetation on the property and along the western property line, and there is some vegetation in front of the house as well. Next slide, please. So staff reviewed a variety of policies in regards to the proposed use on the property of a kennel. And what I do want to recognize is that the rural area does permit a diversity of uses, given the fact that our rural areas are quite large and support a variety of different economic uses, resource-based uses, and do provide opportunity for rural living. So staff reviewed and considered a variety of different policies under the provincial planning statement, which provides planning guidance throughout the province of Ontario, and generally found that the proposed kennel use was in keeping with the statements, the policies of the provincial planning statement. Next slide, please. So the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville also have their own official plan to which policies are set at more of the regional level. A lot of the policies in the United Counties official plan follow the policies within the provincial planning statement, as we do have to conform to that document. The United Counties official plan does speak to allowing for economic opportunity. It recognizes the ability to have residential uses. It also recognizes the diversity of agricultural uses and other resource-based uses that are available within the rural area of the county. If you go to the next slide, there's some additional policies that were considered in the review. And then our final slide on the United Counties official plan speaks again to just some more of the official plan policies that relate to development within the rural area. I do want to note that the planning report provided by staff provides a more fulsome analysis of the policies. If we go into the next slide, please. Let's go one more. Oh, next, please. Under our own official plan, we do have policies in relation to development within the rural area. So we do recognize that lands that are designated rural are not intended to be the focus of rural residential or commercial development alone. However, it allows for a variety of land uses. What I do want to note is that there are no specific policies that identify a kennel as an explicit permitted use, but the official plan does talk to a variety of different commercial, home industries, and home occupations. However, I wouldn't characterize a kennel as a home occupation. Next slide, please. So the request from the applicant would be to permit a kennel within the existing dwelling and recognize existing setbacks of the house and the fenced-in area that exists on the property. What I do want to note is that our kennel zoning for the rural area defines setbacks, including the run areas for the kennel, for the outdoor kennel area itself. The intent wouldn't be that the dogs would be kenneled outside, they would be kenneled in the house, but this would be the recreation area that the dogs would have access to. The property is 13 hectares or 33 acres in size, so it meets the size requirements of the zoning bylaw. However, the frontage requirement is not met. At one point in time, the lot to the east was severed out of the original parcel, which reduced the frontage. If that lot hadn't been severed, there would have been 120 meters of frontage, but the severance left this property with 70 meters of frontage. There is a small portion just to the east of that other property that does provide access to this property to County Road 20. The existing house has a 17.7 meter setback as seen on the provided sketch to the front property line from the house, and then 15.5 meters from the house to the western property line. I also note that the existing fence is located approximately 1 meter off the front property line and off the western interior side yard. If we go to the next slide, please. The applicant also proposed a additional kennel building in the future to be located further back in the property. This would be where the forested area is. They did identify the 30-meter setback from the floodway around that creek. Any development would be required to be set back from that. Next slide, please. So in consideration of the proposed zoning amendments, the zone standards would recognize the existing location of the kennel area and reducing that setback, recognizing that the fencing is existing where it is, as well as the reduced lot frontage. Given the location and the request to do in-home kenneling, staff are recommending there be a cap on the number of dogs permitted to 10. And then notwithstanding the provisions of this section, the kennel business would be confined to the existing residential dwelling, and that a future zoning bylaw amendment would be required to permit the establishment of any detached kennel on the subject lands. So staff are recommending, should council wish to support the zoning amendment, that it just be restricted for now to the house with a cap of 10 dogs, and that any future expansion of kennel business on the property would require a subsequent zoning bylaw amendment. Next slide, please. And then there would be also a site-specific definition which would recognize that the kennel would be permitted as an in-home boarding facility where animals are housed and boarded, for which compensation is paid. Next slide, please. We do regulate our kennels through our animal care and control bylaw. There is a checklist that our staff utilize when inspecting a kennel as well, and things that are required for a kennel include proper housing and accommodations, proper food and water supply, cleanliness, ventilation, disease prevention and control, euthanasia protocols, pest and rodent control, emergency evacuation plan, and a veterinarian relationship. I do also want to note that we do have a noise bylaw that provides the mechanisms to address noise, including barking dogs. Next slide, please. So we received a variety of comments from members of the public. I do have a list I'm just going to read out of individuals just to acknowledge who has submitted comments in opposition and who's submitted comments in support. And this was as of 4 p.m. today. So in opposition, and letters of opposition or concern that we received included from Kendall Bassendale, Gary Breton, Cindy Dawson, Sandra Candow, Alain Caillé and Caitlin McGee, Mrs. Cole, Darcy and Glenn Wither, Caitlin Dawson, Dana Johnston, Jessica Janot, Emily and Jeremy Kirk, Paul and Karen Lyon, Mr. and Mrs. McKay, Julie Millier and Nancy Millier, Randy and Terry Olmsted, Susan Tierney, Sonia Van Deen, Pat Wakefield, and Jennifer Webbs. In support of the application, we received comments from Joanne Duval, Megan Bradley, Lisa Needham, Joelle Pichet, Monica Romaton, Tim and Sandra Stratton, Andrea Van Reckenham, Victoria Rintoul, and Annie Miner. To summarize the comments that were received, I'll start with the letters of concern or objection. One of the concerns we received was in regards to the impact on the adjacent equestrian facility. This includes the horse safety risks, Comments received included that horses are flight animals and can be easily spooked by barking dogs, which could lead to injuries for horses and riders, especially during training, trail riding, and carriage driving. Concerns for the client's safety on the property in the event that a dog could potentially become loose. The impact to the business, there was a concern that the proposed kennel could threaten the viability of the services, events, and clinics that are put on the neighboring equestrian facility. And then the noise and proximity in regards to the proposed dog runs being close to the training areas and property lines with insufficient buffers and setbacks. Noise pollution was also raised as a concern in many letters in regards to the potential for excessive barking within the area. Concerns about there being excessive barking from the property in the past, which concerns of a kennel being established could worsen. And noise was viewed as an incompatible use with the current quiet rural lifestyle. We received concerns in regards to property values. Residents believe that the kennel would reduce the value of their property. Concerns in regards to the environment and health from the potential runoff of contamination from dog waste, the risk of diseases spread if waste management practices aren't implemented, and the disruption of local wildlife habitats, especially in forested areas and any conservation protected areas. Safety concerns and control issues for if animals were at large. The original request from the applicant was to have up to 20 dogs on the property, and there were concerns about managing 20 dogs on the property itself. Zoning and precedent issues. The property doesn't meet zoning standards for the kennel zone, and there are special exceptions that are being sought to recognize those reduced standards. Some of the neighbors objected to the reduced standards as they are concerned about future precedents in the rural area. And then there was also concerns in regards to the quality of life and the integrity of the local community and just the disruption that the kennel could cause to those neighbors. Letters of support that we received spoke to the character of the property owner and applicant. Many letters spoke to the individual's community involvement in past organizations and have credited her for her integrity and leadership. We received comments from individuals who have had the individual watch their pets in the past and are confident in their ability to run a kennel. Many of the letters spoke to the community need and economic benefit, speaking to the demand for kennel services, talking about small business growth in the rural area and the positive impacts that could have for North Grenville and just the benefits to the local economy. And there were comments in regards to the thoughtful and responsible approach that was being provided by the applicant in regards to the operation of their proposed kennel. So in total, we did receive 22 letters of objection, and after the the slide deck was presented, we received 2 more, but 10 letters of support. If we go to the next slide, please. We did receive comments from South Nation Conservation in regards to the floodway for that future building area. Enbridge provided that they had no comment. Our bylaw division did provide us with the requirements to establish a kennel, and they had verified that to date there have been no noise complaints or any charges laid under our bylaws in relation to noise from this property. Next slide. So it is recommended that council approve and enact a bylaw for the property that would permit the kennel use on a smaller scale, limiting the number of dogs to 10. And additionally, the zoning wouldn't permit the establishment of a standalone kennel building without the benefit of a future zoning application once that proposal is more planned out and thought out as to its location, the size and the scale and the number of kennels. That concludes my presentation. I am happy to take comments from members of council at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was a very fulsome presentation. We appreciate all of the information, council colleagues. Is there any questions for Ms. Martin before we hear from the applicant and members of the public? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. To Director Martin, is it currently being used as a kennel, a boarding or a kennel?
The zoning does not permit it, and in conversation with the property owner, it is not currently today being used as a kennel.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Martin? Ms. Martin, I just wanted to ask, you're suggesting that every rezoning when it comes to or consideration of an application for a kennel is specific to that kennel. There's no sort of bylaw writ large where, a kennel could be established without having to go through a process like this. Is that correct?
Thank you for your question, Your Worship. So under the zoning bylaw, we do have two kennel zones, one for the agricultural area and one for the rural area. If your property already has that zoning on it, you are permitted to operate a kennel in line with the zoning requirements for setbacks. Other than that, any individual looking to establish a kennel use, if it is not a current permitted use on your property, has to go through the zoning bylaw amendment process.
And when property is acquired with the potential intention of operating a kennel, it's understood that this is a process that one would necessarily have to go through, unless, to your point, there's a pre-existing approval for a kennel operation. Is that right?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have some other comments, but it's important that we hear from the applicant and members of the public. So is the applicant wishing to speak this evening or no? It's as you wish. Of course, this is a public meeting, and you, as other members of the public, have the right to address council. So we invite you to do so now.
Hi there. My name is Tomlin, and I am the agent acting on behalf of the applicant. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the proposed zoning amendment that would permit a kennel use within the rural zone of North Grenville. This amendment is specifically intended to allow an in-home dog boarding operation as the first phase toward a future standalone kennel facility on a property owned and occupied by a local family. The original application proposed boarding up to 20 dogs within the applicant's home under ideal conditions. However, after reviewing community feedback and the recommendation of the township planner, the applicant has revised the request and is still looking to permit a maximum of 13 dogs in the home. This change reflects a genuine effort to address concerns while still allowing the family to move forward with building a responsible, community-conscious rural business. Cindy, the property owner and applicant, has prepared a cost analysis to determine the scale at which the business could become financially viable. The findings show that at 10 dogs, the business would break even or potentially operate at a loss. A minimum of 13 dogs would allow for modest profitability, which would be reinvested into the business for future improvements as the operation matures, something that all new business owners have to go through in the early stages. It's important to emphasize that this proposal is for in-home boarding, where dogs will be cared for within the primary residence and under constant supervision of the family who lives on site full-time. This is not a large-scale kennel. It is a home-based, small-scale operation focused on caring for calm, well-socialized dogs that may not thrive in the traditional kennel environment. The intent of starting with in-home boarding is to establish a client base, build a strong reputation, and develop sustainable practices. The long-term goal is to expand into a detached kennel facility that would comply fully with all setbacks and zoning regulations. The intent is for the operation to remain small, carefully managed, and respectful of its rural settings. We acknowledge the proximity to neighboring homes due to the existing location of the dwelling. To address this, additional fencing and landscaping has already been implemented to improve setbacks along the streetscape. I'd like to clarify that while the original sketch submitted with the application showed fencing 1 meter from the front yard, recent improvements now place all boarded dogs at least 27 meters from the road and located behind the house, creating an 84-meter buffer to the nearest dwelling along County Road 20. Since the onset of COVID-19, we've seen a dramatic increase in dog ownership along with a surge in demand for quality boarding services. As me personally, I own 2 large dogs. I can attest to the difficulty of finding reliable local care. Families are increasingly seeking safe, trustworthy, and home-like boarding options. This proposal is designed to fill that gap in a way that aligns with North Grenville's rural character. We're also aware of concerns raised by neighbors, including those connected to the adjacent horse boarding facility. Some letters express concerns that the presence of dogs could disturb horse behavior. I also own horses, and I can confidently say that when managed and separated properly, dogs and horses can coexist peacefully. This subject property will be fully enclosed and closely monitored. No access between properties and no direct interaction between the dogs and neighboring horses should exist. It's also worth noting that the horses in question, I believe, are carriage horses, which are typically trained to remain calm in public environments. And a key part of all horse trading is bomb-proofing and desensitization to prevent spooking. I feel that if there are concerns with horses reacting, it's more a behavioral issue rather than a land use incompatibility. While we fully respect the concerns raised by nearby property owners, it's important to recognize that no property can be expected to remain entirely silent. Change can be daunting, but our goal is to contribute to a thriving, harmonious rural community along a key corridor in North Grenville. To further address concerns, additional fencing is being installed along the western edge of the property to ensure boarded dogs have no access to neighboring farms. Aerial imagery indicates that all neighboring horse paddocks are located 60 meters from the property line, buffered by dense vegetation that provides both visual and acoustic screening. Riding areas such as indoor and outdoor arenas appear to be located more than 150 meters from the property line and are well out of sight. Residents to the east are shielded by the existing structures on the property and natural vegetation. Any future expansion, including a detached kennel facility, will be located farther back on the lot, away from the county road, and situated to meet or exceed the required 30-meter setback from all property lines. The lot is already heavily vegetated, and Cindy and her family are working with conservation authorities to plant an additional 1,200 trees, further enhancing biodiversity. 2,400. We also recognize that the term kennel can carry negative connotations. However, the goal here is not to create a noisy or impersonal facility. It's quite the opposite. The vision is for a peaceful, structured in-home boarding experience that prioritizes both the well-being of the dogs and the quality of life for neighboring residents. Clients will be carefully vetted, and only well-behaved, socialized dogs will be accepted. This approach will carry forward into any future expansion, ensuring a consistent standard of care and compatibility with the surrounding community. Lastly, I'd like to point out that North Grenville is currently the only township in the surrounding area that requires a site-specific zoning for kennels. Other municipalities, including Ottawa, Merrickville, Augusta, Dundas, and Edwardsburg Cardinal, all bordering this township, already permit kennels as of right in rural zones, recognizing them as a compatible rural use. In closing, this proposal reflects a thoughtful, respectful approach to rural business development. It supports community needs, protects the character of the area, and provides meaningful oversight. This is a family seeking to create something sustainable, responsible, in harmony with its surroundings, while listening to the neighbors and striving to be a part of the solution. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions for the applicant at this time? Seeing none, then we'll invite. Oh, I apologize. Councilor, I don't know how I didn't see you. I apologize.
Sorry.
I'm telling you, I am challenged with the back and forth, so I regret my error. Please fire away.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, please, who is the owner? You're the owner, okay. And do you live on the property? Are you going to be the one who cares for these dogs?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
it's in your home?
It's in my home with my family. We have 6 children combined. Our 4 oldest are no longer living on the property. We actually have one that's coming back from St. Lawrence in Kingston. She's taking vet assistant, which is in line with our goals. And then we, of course, have our 14-year-old who is slowly working up the chain to get on board on the property.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much. Do you have chickens too?
Some.
Okay,
A few, yes.
okay, thank you.
Might I ask, are you a newer property owner in North Grenville?
Yes, so we moved to Greeley in 2011 when our daughter was born, and we lived there for about 11 years through COVID. And it was through COVID that we really encountered a huge issue with caring for our own animals, but our own dogs. But we also noticed that there was a huge quantity of pet owners that were established because of COVID. People were home, they had the time, but then everybody started going back to work. And unfortunately, we have dogs that are unfortunately being put in situations where, you know, they have to be surrendered. And so we want to make sure that we provide as much opportunity for all of our dog owners, or any pet owner really, to be able to find a loving, caring place for their dogs to be during the day or overnight. Or our goal is for long-term boarders, so people whose dogs would be 2+ weeks at a time with us in a place where, you know, PetSmart wouldn't be a perfect place for them to live 2, 3, 4 weeks, right? So living on a 33-acre farm, it allows us to have a very natural, by nature environment to take the dogs out and about in.
Great. And were you aware of North Grenville's particular restrictions when it
So
came
to be fair,
Kennelly?
we had actually officially sort of bought 3 properties before we ended up in Kemptville. And all of those properties we had communicated with the City of Ottawa, and we did have the go-ahead that we were able to do those types of businesses on it. However, for whatever reason, we ended up passing this property, and there was just so many important key features, being next to the 416 being one of them. We did use Pet Zone once, way in the beginning when we first had our dogs, but that also left us having to drive 20, 25 minutes off the beaten path to be able to drop our dogs off, which is not always convenient. So that was our goal, was to try and find something that we could foster our dream in, and then we ended up on the property, and it was a disaster. Everywhere was a disaster. It didn't matter where you went, but we bought that, we walked in on that property, and the video that you have of us going through it, and in all the disaster that it had, we could see the vision. We could see behind the trees that were down everywhere. We could see between all the junk that was just everywhere. It was really neglected the last 10, 12 years, I guess, prior to Mr. Taps passing away. So for us, it's important to build something for our family, but also to build something for our community that could have a positive impact.
Sorry, just to interject as well into if she was aware of the zoning. I'm not sure if your realtor told you, but I know from a personal perspective, I purchased a rural property a couple years ago. My real estate agent did not know zoning requirements and what that would permit. Me having multiple animals, horses, chickens, dogs, everything, I wanted to ensure I had adequate setbacks, and that was definitely something I had to look into on my own. So I can definitely understand purchasing, not realizing the zoning, and then having to go through this process.
And on that as well, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, okay.
That's it.
Okay, great, thanks. Any other questions, colleagues, for the applicants? Okay. Well, thank you for being here, and I'm just going to invite other members of the public, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So I know a number of you have submitted letters. I invite anyone who wishes to speak on the record in regards to their concerns to feel free to address council if that's your desire. This is, sure, you have to come down, of course, to the mic. I'm sure you've been watching all evening, so you know the routine. Yes, you'll have to come down to the desk, thanks. And just given that there's likely a number of people speaking, we'll just keep an eye on the time. So thank you very much. I'll let you know if you're going beyond what might be reasonable, just given the number of people who wish to speak, but please.
Gotcha, okay.
Thanks.
I'm Randy Olmsted. We own, my wife Terry and I own the property adjacent to it, 2950 County Road 20. We have Fairstead Stables. The proposed rezoning of an in-home kennel license should not be considered, as the property does not meet the criteria for both the property frontage and the east and west buffering. as per the zoning requirements. This is a great example of why these requirements are put in place to protect both the neighbors and the existing businesses. And with the property not meeting the zoning requirements, I'd like to point out they've been running an unlicensed kennel since 2023. And we discovered this last week when we were starting to do our research and came across their website. And they have a kennel fenced area right up against our property line. And I noticed on the Google map, when you had the site plan, there was heavy vegetation between our property and their property. They've spent the last year cleaning out that hedge line, and we can actually see their house and the kennel from our back deck. So the vegetation, which was in the original fence line, a good portion of it is now gone. So unfortunately, we get to see the kennel. This kennel has not really been servicing a need. We've noticed through our research that there are actually 12 kennels in the Kemptville area, and there are 20 plus kennels in the Greeley area. So in their outline, when they talked about business development in the community and serving a need, it really doesn't fall into play in our area. And I'm curious as to, with the 8 letters of support, are any of those local letters from our community, from County Road 20, between 22 and 44? I think that's a fair question to ask, because I know that we've got dog issues already, and this would probably just add to it, and it's a pretty big concern of ours. Just to give you a little snapshot of Fairstead Stables, and I'm going to pass along some pictures. Randy, once they get to you, don't put them in your briefcase. Fairstead Stable is a 100-acre equestrian facility with a new barn, new indoor arena, as well as a manicured driving ring and riding sand ring. Fairstead has been providing a unique service in Eastern Ontario for 13 years and has built a strong reputation in the driving community with customers as far away as Windsor and Guelph for training. A majority of our driving clients are older females, and our riding clients are all female with a mix of competitive and trail riders utilizing the whole 100 acres. We have trails all the way back through our sugar bush, and we actually also have access to Johnson's Tree Farm, where we have another 200 acres for riding and driving. So we are a pretty substantial facility. The noise from a kennel with boarded, barking dogs, as well as the smell of dogs the smell that dogs create will be too disruptive for the horses, whether in carriage training or riding. Please understand that dogs are predators and horses are prey. In their engineering planning report, please note this report they had created, it had a real strong feeling of when it was written for them, it was, okay, how do we spin this so that a kennel looks okay on the land that they're proposing to put it on. And it really downplays the weaknesses and really pushes for the rezoning, and we don't think that that's okay. In section 2.5 of their planning report, it states, fostering a balanced rural area by introducing new services and amenities while utilizing existing infrastructure. This kennel will not be introducing a new service. As mentioned earlier, there are already 12 licensed kennels within a 15-mile radius of our area. There are 20 plus kennels in the Greeley area. Their infrastructure in place is not adequate. The outbuildings are close to beyond repair. I've been in them. The house is too close to the road with too many neighbors, too close north, east, and west of the property. The kennel they currently have is right up against our property line, as I mentioned earlier. The west 30-meter buffer required on our side, the planning report suggests that 15 meters of that is on our property, and to them that's okay. Well, it's not. That area we use on an ongoing basis with training ponies and horses. We have what we call the Pines section where we train for cross country, and along the fence line south to the Pines area, that's where we set up our cones competition course where the horses learn to compete with cones. We also have 2 horse paddocks that are 70 meters from the fence line that have 5 horses in them. So, so that property line is very important to us. This does not allow enough room for multiple barking dogs as well as dogs running in that area. And we have 2 concerns. We've got the horses that are fearful of the barking, and we've got the horses that are fearful of, let's say, 10 dogs running on the other side of a hedge. And it's that fight or flight that they have, and that's where trouble begins. The noise, the smell, and the commotion will be too much of a distraction for the horse and or the rider and driver, and somebody will get injured or worse. And if there's an injury because of dogs doing what they're doing on the other side of the hedgerow, who's liable? Are we liable? If somebody falls off their horse because a dog decides that it's going to go, in a barking rage, and somebody gets injured, do we pay that price or do they? Section 3.5 in their planning, land use compatibility. Compatibility with surrounding land uses states in the planning document that as it is not a major facility and not located near significant facilities, that would create conflicts such as odor, noise. Claims this proposal reflects minimizing adverse effects from incompatible land use. Well, I think Fairstead Stables is a significant facility. Being unique to Eastern Ontario in both the services and infrastructure, we're really the only facility that offers the carriage driving for training and for competition. Located adjacent to the applicant's property, Fairstead Stable has 100 acres, a 70 by 144 indoor arena, a 105 by 35 new barn, 8 outbuildings, and a restored 1830s stone house. We've invested over $1 million over the past 13 years developing Fairstead Stable, and we currently employ 2 full-time and 2 part-time workers. Fairstead Stable has 3 revenue streams. We have boarders. We train horses for carriage driving, and we also train drivers. There are 4 major events that we put on each year, and these people bring their horses and their carriages for training, clinics, and competitions. Should the kennel be approved, Fairstead Stable, we would close because we would be to the point where, and we've talked to our boarders already about what is going on, and a number of them have already said, well, if there's a kennel beside us, they're going to have to leave because they would be uncomfortable. They would be worried about getting injured, and that is a reality. We would not be able to host the clinics or events because there would be fear that dogs would create an unsafe situation where an injury will occur. And I'll use an example. We're having Tina Sully, who was the #1 Canadian CDE driver. She's doing a clinic in May. It's a Saturday-Sunday clinic, costs a lot of money to bring her here. And let's say there's a kennel and Sunday morning, for whatever reason, the dogs start barking, they start wrestling, there's running around, and we can't finish the clinic. 2 things are going to happen. One, bylaw will be called, and they'll show up on Monday, and it's too late. The people who were in the clinic will go home and say, we're not going back to that clinic. And we're going to tell all our friends because we go there and the place is too dangerous. So we would lose that revenue. So between the borders and the clinics, and then that would also fall into why would somebody bring their horse for training when their horse could be mentally damaged because of a bad situation with dogs.
Just reminding you, it's been 10 minutes. I know you have
I only
neighbors
have
and friends.
very,
who
very
wish
little
to
left.
speak.
I'm almost
Perfect.
done.
Okay, thank you.
So in conclusion, should Fairstead have to close, there'll be 4 lost jobs. There'll be 13-year tax-paying business will be closed. A unique facility in Eastern Ontario will be gone. I'm stressing the council, along with all of our close neighbors in Miller's Corners, do not approve the proposed amendment. I'm not going to say that. You know, there are just too many houses around, and quite frankly, we don't trust the whole situation. I think it would just be such a negative impact on Miller's Corners, and I think it would be a mistake. It would be the wrong decision if it was allowed.
Okay, we really appreciate your time.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
outlining your concerns.
Thanks.
Ms. Martin.
Mayor Packford, just to answer Mr. Olmsted's questions in regards to the letters of support, 2 are within North Grenville, none were from neighbors within the immediate vicinity, and we did have some letters of support come from individuals that were outside of the community.
Okay, thank you. Who else is wishing to speak this evening? Okay, thank you. Just a name and address, please.
Sorry?
Just a name and address, please.
Oh, yeah, 2995 County Road 20.
Great, thank you.
I'm a bit nervous, sorry about that, but.
We don't mean to make anyone nervous, we promise. So fire away. The only concern we have is just time.
Yeah.
But absolutely.
I'll make this one
yes,
quick.
Feel at ease.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Alain Kaye, and I'm a resident of the neighborhood for going on 5 years. I'm here to voice my strong opposition to the proposed bylaw adjustment that will allow dog kennel to operate next door to my home. 2 keys is personal to me. This isn't about being against animals or responsible pet care, but allowing a commercial kennel to operate close to many houses raise serious concern, particularly for the health and well-being of my family. My partner and I are expecting a newborn into our home, and as you can imagine, a peaceful and quiet environment is essential not only to us, but for the future baby. And also the community has a strong opinion that we like our neighborhood quiet. And for me, it's just the well-being, and we have concerns with the persistent barking, if that will become an issue, and constantly having to call bylaw, which can be nauseating. On top of that, I'm deeply concerned about how the bylaw change can impact our property value. Introducing commercial activity, especially when it brings frequent noise, detracts from the appeal of a quiet resident neighborhood. If this adjustment goes through, statistics shows that all house value could drop 5 to 10%, and which for many of us represent a large investment. We moved here, we've worked hard for what we've achieved. We have a lot of nice homes in our neighborhood. We have a great community, and I don't want to lose 10% on my investment, right? And finally, typically a kennel is an area located far away from people, which is not, I don't see that's the case in this instance, as other people alluded to. I asked the council to prioritize the health piece and the financial security of all the plaintiffs today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. Other comments? Yes, come on down. You had no reason to be nervous, by the way. You did very well. Just name and address if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. My name is Paul Lyon. I live at 2910 County Road 20. I'd like to provide some insight into the issue with dogs barking. Currently, I have a neighbor that has 4 hound dogs in his backyard. I have spoken with the owner, and I understand the dogs will be leaving within the next, by the end of this month. The point is, though, while the dogs were there, and if they got excited, the hound dogs would bark constantly for, 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. And if you're in your front yard and you're trying to work, around the yard, it was to a point that we'd go inside, close the windows, because anyhow, I do know that bylaw was approached regarding this particular incident, but I think it's something that, we've experienced and has been going on. So it gives the neighbors around an idea of what, they're worried about. And I know for a fact that homeowners beyond the site that we're discussing now for the kennel can hear these dogs. So the noise issue is a valid issue. Dogs bark at anywhere from 80 to 90 decibels, which is about common to a sledgehammer. So anyhow, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Other comments? We'll just hear from members of the public, and then we can go back to the applicant for a final comment. For sure, yep. So just come on down in whatever order makes sense. You can sit near the front so you don't have to go back. And that way, we'll save you a bit of a trip. But welcome, and just a name and address, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name's LaDonna Bodnarchuk. I live at 13 Merrick Trail in Kempville. And Cindy, I met her because she met me because I have 2 Basenjis. These are my second 2 Basenjis that I've had. First of all, Basenjis don't smell unless they're going to roll in bear poop, any type of poop, horse poop, cow poop. I don't know, when you're driving down a country road, yes, what do you smell? You smell cows, you smell horses. Do you smell the dogs? I've never heard of that. My dogs, Basenjis, they cannot bark all day long. They physically cannot. They can go, well, shall I do a little bark? No. They do make noises, yes, but they would not be able to make noises, I'm not saying barking, because they can't do a real bark all day long. That does not happen. And usually at nighttime, they want to go to bed. Daytime, one likes to sleep in, the other one gets up. When they're in the house, my male especially, he wants to go in the backyard because he knows there's something outside. Does he bark? No. In the daytime, when they see squirrels and foxes, whatever, in the yard, do they run outside? In the house, are they barking? They don't. When I let them outside, do they bark? They don't. And by the way, my dogs, Basenjis, that don't smell, unless they roll in something, are also considered a hound dog. So not all hounds bark, not all dogs bark, and especially nonstop. And I guess that's all. I'm just really offended hearing about how stinky dogs are when somebody has a horse. They smell more than a dog.
Okay, we'll just invite any informal conversation between residents perhaps can happen at the back, but we're going to invite our next resident to speak. Thank you. Welcome, just a name and address, please.
Madam Mayor, councillors, my name is Dana Johnston, and I'm a boarder at the Fairstead Stables. I live in Winchester, but I just wanted to emphasize 2 different things. One, the fear and flight aspect of horses, because I drive a miniature horse. And if you know horses, you know that my 31-inch horse is about the size of a big dog. And so the fear and the flight when a big dog is visual to this little horse is quite concerning for me, because I'm the one sitting in the carriage. And the other thing I wanted to say, because it really, the Olmsteds don't want to toot their own horns, but this facility is unique to Eastern Ontario. It's an amazing facility with expert instruction and care for horses. I brought my horse here 3 years ago, and I was driving an hour and a half each way to be here. So I moved here. So I'm really happy to be in this part of the world, and I really don't want to lose my stable. Thank you.
Other comments? Yep, feel free. Anyone who wishes to come down, feel free to do so now, so we can make use of the time we have, and then we'll probably take a quick break.
Hi there, thank you for the time today. Darcy Wither, 3010 County Road 20. I'm a direct neighbor of the property in question. I am just wanting to voice my concern about setting the precedent of allowing the 10, or I guess it's now 13 dog kennel within the house, and changing the zoning to then facilitate the second phase that we all know is planned for 20 dogs, some unknowns such as a dog run, you don't have insight into the full scope of this project. And my biggest concern is I have no understanding of, should phase 1 get approved and we rezone, is that it? I know we're talking about they would need to get a second approval process, but, sorry, I'm emotional. Yeah, I just wanted to voice my concern that it is setting a precedent and a change that can be leveraged into a much larger facility, and I would hope that we are considering that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Great, thanks. I think you just have to push the button to turn on the mic, or is it on already?
Hello?
Oh, it's on. Okay.
Hi.
How did you know it was on, Karen? Oh, you can see the light. It's very subtle. Okay. Okay. Oh, now I can see it. Okay. Name and address again, sorry.
Hi, I'm Sonia Van Dyne. I'm at 3020 County Road 20.
Great.
And so, yeah, I just had a couple of issues opposing the zoning. One concern is that a kennel in the nearby area may impact wildlife habitats if there is excessive noise, or even just the scent of many dogs in the area, not to mention impacts if there were escapes. As a member of the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program, some of my objectives are not only to manage the health of the trees on my property, but also protect any wildlife and their habitats as well. Over the years, we have seen many deer, rabbits, ducks, grouse, and many other species of birds and barred owls using the forest as their home. Sorry. One source suggests that noise from many dogs may cause undue stress to certain species and cause them to leave the area. The constant barking could be stressful for animals and disturb wildlife communication, foraging, and habitat use. This is taken from ResearchGate. Another potential issue is that if the waste is not managed properly, it could contaminate the waterways, which could have a major impact on all sorts of aquatic and other species due to disease and other unnatural substances entering the environment. With the creek and floodplain so close to the proposed area, this is concerning to me. Please take these considerations of my concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I'll just, before we return to the applicant, is there any other member of the public outside of the applicant wishing to speak? Okay. And again, my duty in a public meeting on behalf of council is to make sure that anyone who wishes to speak to the application has that opportunity. And then we'll certainly go back to the applicant one more time. But this is your chance. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kendall Bassendale, 10963 Kerrs Ridge Road. And for the past year, Terry has been my driving coach for my miniature horse. My biggest concern is the fencing for the dogs. What happens if my Minnie gets attacked? I don't know how high their fencing is. I know in the front yard it's about 4 feet. I have a dog that has climbed a 10-foot chain link fence, so I'm a little worried about that. I know Basenjis don't bark, but if they're up to 13 dogs, what are the other 11 dogs going to be? St. Bernards, Rottweilers. A lot of these dogs have a high prey drive. And my Minnie's can't fight, so she's going to run. And in driving, you don't have as much control as in riding. It's going to end up in an accident. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else wishing to speak before we return to the applicant? Not seeing anyone else? Okay, so we'll return to the applicant before resuming discussion between and among council colleagues.
I just want to point out that we talk a lot about the noise and the nuisance noise, and obviously we are very all aware that there's issues on our street currently. Just to point out that as a daycare owner for a daycare of dogs, you're outside with the dogs the whole time. They are not, because we're doing it in-home, it's a smaller scale, they don't have in and out privileges like a normal kennel would have. So, you know, a normal kennel and run, they would, you know, at whatever times they let them in and out and so on and so forth. We have to physically be with them in order to open the door, and then we would be outside with them. We have also put security cameras all over the outside of the property to be able to mitigate any potential noises, to see where they could be coming from. Granted, we don't really have enough information to be able to provide further detail based on, you know, friends coming in and or whatever else from a dog standpoint. So I just want to reassure everybody from a noise standpoint that they are not unattended. They are not running solo. If they are left alone, they're alone in their boarding room, in their safe space within their own family. So meaning if you had a dog and you had a dog, they would never be in the same boarding room alone at any given time. So I want to reassure everybody that we're very well of barking. Actually, you could ask any of my kids. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is the barking. I love our breed for that reason, but I'm also very well aware that other breeds have different behaviors. On that note, we also have a kennel application, which is a system where clients can go in and they will write all the information about their dogs. They're required to do a meet and greet with us before even considering having them to come and stay. The meet and greet is a walk around the property outside, at which point they would secure their dogs in their car. They can come in our home and see what the current situation is, what's going on with whoever is in the home at the time. We have also since decided that for any long-term boarders of 2+ weeks, we would actually ask for them to do a 1 or a 2 night short stay in order to really get a hands-on idea of what that dog's like and how we can better absorb or how we can better manage and mitigate the neighbors' concerns as well as our own. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, thank you. We appreciate all of the comments. I know council colleagues, it's a lot to absorb. Ms. Martin, of course, has brought to our attention and developed a very fulsome staff report. My inclination in this moment would be to potentially defer the matter so we could address some of the issues that have been raised this evening, where we're hearing directly from neighbors and from the applicant, in order to come back, I think in a perhaps more informed way. Not that we haven't had great information from Ms. Martin. I think she's done everything possible to equip us for this conversation. But of course, when you get people in a room and you're hearing all the different perspectives, sometimes it's difficult to make a decision on the spot. So again, I looked at council colleagues for how we wish to proceed. I know there are other items on the agenda this evening. So Councillor Strachan or Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through Madam Mayor. I would be happy to move a deferral. I think that we've heard a lot of different comments, and if there's opportunities to put other suggestions on the table that will mitigate some of the concerns and will still allow a business to open, then I think it would be our due diligence to allow for that time to take place.
Deputy Mayor?
I would support that, and I would second Councillor Strachan's motion, but I'm hoping that when this comes back, that the applicant or the neighbors can clear up a couple of things that have been shared tonight. What I've heard is that it's been operating as an unlicensed kennel since 2023. I've heard that staff is recommending it be limited to 10 dogs, but the applicant says they need 13 dogs for profitability. And I'm also hearing that, there is no visual barrier between the stable and the kennel. Now, mind you, just seeing the kennel is not an issue, but having horses see dogs is an issue. So I'd like to find out if there's any way that a visual barrier can be erected, and I'd like to clear up about how this property has been operating since 2023. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? I think we do have a motion to defer the matter. We have a seconder. I think we have some requests for more information. Of course, a deferral doesn't presuppose an outcome into the future. I think our responsibility to the community, to all of you, whether you're the applicant or neighbors who come with deep concern or opposition, is to digest, discern, and perhaps obviously consider the matter in a more careful way with the benefit of time and Ms. Martin's support. So if there are no other comments on the deferral, I would call the question to defer. All in favor? Okay, thank you. So I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. Take your comments very seriously, I assure you. I want to thank the applicant for being here. I don't think it would be responsible to rush a decision at this moment. So I know there's a lot of anxiety, and I can appreciate the applicant has a vision for the property, and that may feel irreconcilable in this moment, and we'll need some extra time to take our next steps. Certainly, we obviously appreciate and welcome your engagement. So everyone has busy lives, so to come out this evening is not insignificant. And thank you to the applicant for doing her best to respond. And we'll leave it there, I think. And we do have two other items. Council colleagues, I feel like I owe you a break. It's been a long 4.5 hours. So I think we'll do that now. Can I look to Councillor Sullivan to motion us into a break? Yes. Councillor Sullivan.
I'd be happy to do that, but I just wonder if we can give the applicant an idea of when we may table this at council again in the future, please.
And in so doing, would you also, we have to move to take a break now?
Okay.
Do you mind moving?
I will move to take a break.
And
as
before
well.
I call the question, I'll have Amy speak to that. Do I have a seconder for a small break? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Before I call the question, Ms. Martin, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 weeks?
Our next planning meeting, Madam Mayor, is May 14th, and then we do have a meeting in mid-June. Okay. We do have the contact information for everyone who submitted comment. We can circulate when this matter arises. It'll be either May or June, depending on the conversations that are had and if some additional time is needed. But we will provide a courtesy notification, as it wouldn't be considered a public meeting, but we'd let the public know when this matter is arising back on the agenda. If you haven't gotten in contact with the planning department already, planning@northgranville.on.ca, or you can give our office a call just to make sure that you are on our contact list.
Great, thank you. And I'll call the question for a small break. Thanks. Thank you. That carries. Okay, we're reconvening our meeting here in council chambers. Wednesday, April 16th. We did take a short break after some lengthy discussion on a variety of matters, and we're reconvening to consider two reports. One is the Elvira Street supplemental report, and the second is the yard maintenance bylaw, as well as a notice of motion in regards to affordable housing. But we'll start, Ms. Martin, with your first report in regards to Elvira.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not have a presentation this evening, as a verbal update should suffice. So at the last meeting of council where we held the public meeting, there was a lot of discussion around the number of affordable units being provided and the number of accessible units. So in my staff report, I provided a breakdown as to what accessible means under the Ontario Building Code, and I've confirmed with the developer who is here this evening that they'd be providing 33% of those units as accessible between the two buildings. So just over 15% per building would be accessible as per the Ontario Building Code. In regards to affordability, I did have a chance to speak with the developer. My report, unfortunately, was submitted before we could touch base and finalize the number of affordability. So in the report to council, it provides that 5 units are affordable at 10%. However, the developer, in looking at their development, are coming back at 15% with 8 units as affordable. And Mr. Moore is here this evening, Your Worship. Should you like to ask him any questions directly? I know that it is not a public meeting, but at your discretion, he is here to answer any questions in regards to what they've come back to the table with. That concludes my update in regards to the matter. I'm happy to take any questions, or should you wish, the developer is here as well.
And to confirm, I'm hearing that Mr. Moore is committing to 8 units of, and how many are there in total, Ms. Martin? Just remind me.
There are 48 units between the two buildings.
Okay. Just one sec, Mr. Moore. Yes, I'm more than happy to hear from you. And then 33% of the total units, which is 48.
33% of the 48 units
Yes.
would be accessible.
Okay, and that works out to how many precisely?
I believe it's 8
It's
units
a
per
third.
building.
8 units per building. Okay, excellent. 8 units per building, which is effectively, we're talking 16 accessible units and 8 affordable units.
That is correct, Your Worship, and I just want to clarify it's accessible as per the Ontario Building Code.
Indeed. Okay, so just before we go to Mr. Moore, colleagues, unless you want to directly ask something of Mr. Moore, I'm just going to invite comments or questions for Ms. Martin. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, normally Councillor Starkian would be checking the math, but I get 15% with 7 units. 16% is 8 units. So I'm not sure.
17% is 8.
Okay, all right.
So
Not hear the math.
17%.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Perhaps, Your Worship, Mr. Moore can speak to it. When you do the percentage math in regards to 15%, it gets you 7.2 units, so we round it up.
Oh, rounded
You
up to
should be
8.
rounding down to 15.2.
So is it 7 units or 8 units? 8 units.
Okay. Maybe we could consult our other resident mathematician on file, on staff, on council. 8 of 48?
Is 17%.
Yes, I understand. It's not exactly 15%, so it's 8 per, it would be closer to 17%, but I think
Okay.
the point is that it's 8 units per building.
It's 8 accessible units per building. But when we speak of affordable, it's just looking at designated affordable, 8 of 48. Can someone tell me again? Is that? Oh, 16.66. Rounding up to 17. Now I got it. Okay. Does that conclude your report, Ms. Martin? Yes. Okay. Are there any questions of Ms. Martin? Are there any questions of Mr. Moore? No. Okay. So these are commitments, Mr. Moore, that you stand behind? Okay. Is there anything else you would like us to know at this stage?
So, I mean, I just said it was 8 affordable units, which is
6.6, yep.
and then 8 accessible.
Per building. Yes, indeed. Well, we certainly appreciate your reconsideration of the percentage of affordable. That matters a great deal to us. So I think I can safely say on behalf of council, we're highly encouraged to see that you were able to do some rejigging of the project and come back with a higher number. So with that, colleagues, if there were no other questions, we could move to consideration of the recommendation. Yes, Councillor Strachian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do just have a more, I guess, broader question for the Director of Planning. Ms. Martin, is there any stipulation anywhere, any requirement for an overlap between affordable housing and accessible? Like, do they need to intersect at any point, or can they be considered completely separately?
Through your worship, to Councillor Strachian, in this regard, they wouldn't be like, they could be exclusive of each other. The affordable units could also be the accessible units. It's really up to the developer as to how they want to mix and match those units. And I would also think it would also depend on where in the building that they may be located. So yeah, we typically don't make them, they have to be affordable and they have to be accessible. And the accessibility component's typically not something we required on other development applications. Back in 2020, this was something that council had requested of the developer, and coming back to him on the application, and it was something that was still being considered.
If I may add to that, and perhaps this is just me putting the idea out there, is that if there is a possibility to have some overlap between accessibility and affordability, even if for some of the units, I think that would satisfy perhaps needs of a population that may need both of those components without making it mandatory as part of this conversation, but simply something to consider.
Mr. Moore, are there any other comments you'd like to make in regards to the development? If you are to make any substantial comments, you should address us at the mic, but there's no obligation to do so. Okay, great. So just in regards to the report, Ms. Remming, with this updated information, I'm a bit concerned about passing a staff recommendation which has an attached report which refers to a lower number of units. As you know, we deferred this specifically because we were quite concerned and I think uncomfortable with the initial proposal. So how do we ensure that in the motion we reflect the number of units that are being committed for both accessible and affordable?
So the motion is requesting that council approve the official plan amendment as well as the zoning bylaw amendment, which is reflected in the bylaws. So the actual bylaws number 2725 and 2825 have been amended to reflect the changes, and this will be double checked before finalizing the bylaw with your signatures, Madam Mayor.
Ms. Martin, do you have anything else to add?
Through your worship, the bylaw as it states currently in draft form says 10% of the total unit count, but prior to signature, given the discussion, that can be amended to say, we'll probably provide the number of units versus percentage, just to be more accurate, but that can be updated prior to signature given the discussion.
Why don't we just add, Ms. Remming, that in addition to the recommendation around the approving, that council approve and enact bylaw 2725, to adopt site-specific official plan amendment number 13 and approve and enact bylaw 2825 to approve a zoning bylaw amendment for the property. Why don't we just say with a stipulation of 16 accessible units and 8 affordable units? If that's embedded in the motion, that will provide, I think, additional guidance in terms of the final draft of the bylaw. Okay. Do I have a mover and a seconder then? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Any last comments, Council? Okay, Mr. Moore, we do really appreciate that you were able to work with us on this. It matters a great deal to our municipality, so I want to thank you very much for taking seriously our concerns. And Ms. Martin, I believe in terms of the 8 affordable units, they're subject to a 10-year agreement. Is that how we've typically I can't remember, and it's late, so you'll have to remind me.
Thank you, Your Worship. That would be stipulated in a further agreement through the site plan control process with the property owner. What we've been seeing is 10 years on average for other developments.
And I assume that would be guidance in this case as well, then? A 10-year agreement?
Yeah, I think, Your Worship, oftentimes the developers are in receipt of CMHC applications, so we typically try to follow the timelines within their CMHC applications, so we're not encumbering further agreements that they may be entered into.
Which are typically 10-year agreements with Canada Mortgage Housing, correct?
I believe that is correct.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Moore? Okay. So I think we can safely assume that the units being designated are for a minimum of 10 years. I would not be wrong in that assumption? No? Okay, sounds good. Great. So once again, the stipulation in regards to the bylaws here for the official plan amendment number 13 and the zoning bylaw amendment itself is that there will be a minimum of 16 accessible and a minimum of 8 affordable. And the affordable will have a 10-year stipulation. So with that, we have a mover and a seconder in Deputy Mayor and Councillor Sullivan. So I will call the question. All in favor? Yes. Sure.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Moore. The 8 affordable units, will they be a mix of 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom, or studio 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom?
Yes,
Yeah,
please. Yeah.
So we ran our numbers on 1-bedroom units being the affordability ones, but we haven't ran numbers on the 2-bedroom, so we can open it up to that. It's I think it'll be more dependent on what the applications are that come in once we start renting them out. Same with accessibility linked to affordability. It really depends on who we start receiving as applicants at the time.
Councillor Sullivan?
Okay, thank you. So at this point, they're all 1 bedrooms that are
Sorry, go ahead.
depending on the applicants. Is that right?
So we can do 1 or 2 bedroom, but all I'm saying is when we ran our numbers, it was based on the 1-bedroom numbers.
Okay.
So we know what sort of numbers we're dealing with at a 1-bedroom level, but 2 bedrooms, we haven't run that number yet. So
I'm just thinking that perhaps there's going to be a demographic of people who need affordable housing that would require a 2-bedroom.
if you want, we could put something in where it's a minimum of 2 of them, 2 of the units be 2-bedroom.
Okay,
For
great.
affordable or something.
Okay, so with a further amendment, we've said 16 accessible units, 8 affordable units. I'm not sure that I considered it carried because I thought it was interrupted by the vote. Right. I understood it was midway. But if the developer is amenable, yes. Yes, okay. Deputy Mayor, you don't mind a further stipulation of a minimum of 2 of the affordable units being 2-bedroom?
Very gracious of
Okay,
the developer.
thank you. Okay, all right. Minimum of 2. Thank you, Ms. Remming, for your indulgence. It appears that the mover is supportive. Minimum of 2 of the affordable units being 2 bedrooms. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So with that, I'm calling the question. All in favor, colleagues, once and for all? Okay, great. Thank you to everyone for your collaboration, and thank you again. When do you expect to break ground?
In the spring.
Excellent.
As long as we get everything approved.
And when, is it a 18-month build, more or less? What's your?
I'm not the builder. I'm an investor. So the builder.
Okay.
I think it's maybe 14 months, 16 months kind of turnaround.
Okay, thank you. And are you from Eastern Ontario originally? What brings you
I
to
grew up
Kentville?
in the east end of Ottawa, in Navan.
Okay,
And I moved out to Perth 5 years ago. And,
okay,
now I reside there.
okay, excellent. Okay.
So-
Well, thank you again for coming and helping to, I think, create the conditions for us to feel rather excited about this development. So thank you.
Perfect.
All
Thank
right. Thank you. So with that, we're going to go to Ms. Martin's other report, which she says is extremely quick. And given the hour, I think we would welcome that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our manager of bylaw services said this was a pretty straightforward report, so I did the honorable thing and gave him the rest of the evening off after our closed session and volunteered to do his presentation for him, just given how relatively straightforward the changes are. So the recommendation this evening before council would be to enact bylaw number 10524. Which would create a new bylaw in regards to our yard maintenance bylaw, which requires property owners or occupants to maintain their land by keeping it clean and free of refuse. If we go to the next slide, the purpose of the bylaw is to modernize our yard maintenance regulations by updating property owner responsibilities and enforcement mechanisms. It is a completely new yard maintenance bylaw, and it also includes the provisions for our AMPs, which came into force at the beginning of this year. Next slide, please. As council remembers, I hope back on November 18th, 2024, the bylaw was provided with a series of other bylaws that our bylaw services manager had been updating. At this time, the yard maintenance bylaw was deferred to the Environmental Action Advisory Committee to work on the definition of the word nuisance and to discuss some of the species of plants that would be prohibited. So following this directive, staff have met with the committee and a definition of nuisance was agreed upon. Additionally, feedback was received regarding the list of prohibited plants in Schedule A of the bylaw. So based on this feedback, we've refined that list. The first 25 items are actually identified in the Noxious Weeds Act. And then the other last nine plants are identified to be invasive to the province of Ontario. And so they were included. I do also want to note that provisions were added to the bylaw as well as detailed in the staff report that exempted the bylaw from being applied to municipal lands. And with that, that concludes the presentation. I'll do my best to answer any questions, but I believe that there was a fulsome discussion that was had back in November, and staff have responded quite efficiently to the concerns and worked quite effectively with the Environmental Action Committee to address the matters within the bylaw. Thank you.
Maybe I can ask Councillor Strachan, do you feel that the EAC's Environmental Action Committee's comments were incorporated? Does this align with your expectations?
Yes, to you, Madam Mayor. I think so. They had an opportunity to ask Mr. Baribeau a number of questions and dig into it. The list of known weeds, noxious weeds, and so on. I think they'll have an ongoing discussion about that and perhaps have input as time goes on as well. As Ms. Martin has referred to, that the staff will be keeping an eye on it, but the committee will as well.
Okay. Okay, with that, colleagues, I would maybe Councillor Strachan, you'd be interested in moving that Council enact bylaw number 10524, bylaw to require the owner or occupant of land to clean or clear the land or to clear refuse from the land. Councillor Strachan has moved. Councillor Wilson, would you like to second? Thank you. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Thanks. So moving, I know, Deputy Mayor, that you have a notice of motion here. Of course, we could defer that for a different meeting of council, given the hour, or we could commence a discussion. I'm at your disposal.
I have no way of predicting what kind of debate or discussion will be around it. If you think it's late, I'm happy to defer it, but I don't think it takes much time. Given the agreement that we had with our last developer here, I mean, that's where it all came from. That notice was a result of the earlier discussion in which we deferred to try and see if the developer could come back with more than 10%, and he has. So I think this just provide staff a way of defining the floor. We have an aspirational ceiling of 25%, or it's not a ceiling, but we've never had it defined a floor, and I'm suggesting 15%. But if you want to take this up
Well, let's see
later, we can do it.
if there's any debate. If there's no debate,
Well, it'll need someone to second it.
I understand that. I'm well aware. So you are moving the motion then, and I'll look for a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Sullivan. Is there a substantive discussion on this notice of motion?
I would just like to make the change of language, instead of a minimum of 10 or 15%, just to make it a minimum of 15%.
Great.
Affordability.
Okay. And you're amenable to that, to seconded our motion, Councillor Sullivan? Okay. Minimum of 15. Excellent. All right. Are there any other changes or considerations? This is something that we've discussed with Ms. Martin in terms of bringing back a more nuanced affordable housing policy. So I think we do welcome the opportunity for a policy framework that allows for some of the flexibility and potential incentives that are referenced here. Yes, Councillor Strachan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, as a general comment, I think it is what is being proposed here, I think is more realistic and in line with what we have seen from developers as well. 25% has been a challenge for most to achieve. So I think that offering the opportunity to have incentives to reach the 25% may get us better results. So I would be in favor of seeing what staff can come back with.
Okay. I'm going to, with that, call the question. All in favor? It carries. Thank you so much. I do not believe we have anyone left from our community, just us, last one standing. Confirmatory bylaw, that is bylaw 3725 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on April 16th. Be adopted and passed. Councillor Strachan and Councillor Wilson, if you don't mind. Thank you. Calling the question, all in favor, and motion to adjourn our rather lengthy meeting at 9:48 p.m. And I'll look to Councillor Sullivan and Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Good. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.